watched Bobby Kennedy for President, new Netflix documentary, 4 episodes, a little less than an hour long, so you can get through it really quick. Now, I liked how they trace, so you see his life, and he starts out very much in JFK's shadow, very much supportive of his presidency. You see his associations with Joe McCarthy, and this is time of anti-communism, and then that bleeds into his very vocal support for the Vietnam War initially, and also wiretapping Martin Luther King's phone. He was a part of the FBI wiretapping these different civil rights leaders. So that's a very different image than most people would have of the Kennedys and Robert Kennedy in particular. Now, we see how after JFK's death, it hits him hard, and there seems to be a grieving period, and then it starts to change the way he interacts with people, and it's interesting how much of that was him being affected by the death, how much of that was political expediency and just wanting to be a chameleon and change, but seems to really start to support civil rights in an earnest way. And I like how he wins some people over who, because of his past associations, they were very skeptical about how genuine he was, but he did seem to really win a lot of people over. And we see how just for some people, they would just see how that just shows how Robert Kennedy is a much more complicated figure, much more of a chameleon, much more calculating because he changes positions like that, and how all of what we put on him, this idealism, how we build him up, that's so much to do with him getting shot, and kind of how, had he become president, maybe he would have been very average president, he would have made a lot of compromises, but because he was shot right before he potentially became president, and there's all that what might have been, we build him up, and there's the sense that the death really was a loss of American idealism. And you see Lyndon Baines Johnson, president after JFK, his war on poverty. And you think of the idea that America could stamp out poverty within its borders and not just manage the decline like we see now, not just, improve the economy, have recovery. No, the idea that America could do anything, it was so powerful we could stamp out poverty, that kind of idealism, it's lost to a lot of an extent. You wonder how much of it was these assassinations that we see, just JFK in 1963, then Malcolm X in 1965, and then Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy in 1968. That's 4 major, nowadays, we don't have any assassinations, and, you get those conspiracy questions about why. Was it really just assassin C1 assassination, and then they think, oh, maybe I could do that, and it kind of snowballs, or was there some kind of nefarious force orchestrating all of them? It's very strange, and the documentary definitely delves into the conspiracy aspect, and it doesn't delve into it a ton. There's no smoking gun that, yeah, for sure it was a conspiracy, but it really just seems like with a lot of other cases that the people in power really tried to get the trial over as quickly as possible, didn't want a lot of questions, and seemed like the guy who went to jail for it, he would have got the death penalty, but they abolished the death penalty. He went to jail for it. He's still in jail. He was up for parole. He didn't get it. Just, it's almost as if they found the biggest loner with no very minor family connections, wasn't from this country, didn't know a lot of people. It seemed very unbalanced, unhinged, and just kind of grabbed him. And we get this chilling sequence of his defense team. It sounds like they're interviewing him, but it sounds like they're hypnotizing him, and it sounds like it's hypnosis. And you see them drilling into his head, and then you shot him, and then you walked. And again, with just the CIA and MK Ultra and all the mind control experiments that they did do, just to have this footage of the person who was definitely a part of it. And again, it's not clear cut. There is stuff in his journal where he says, my passion to kill RFK has risen to an obsession. I have to kill him. So it's definitely not clear cut that he clearly was involved, but there was a lot of questions. I was surprised at how much the documentary really delved into that. It was interesting, kind of bold. And it is interesting with these assassins is the idea that the media, they always use 3 names to kind of add some kind of weight. The assassin here only had 1 name, the same first and last name, and the guard, there's one guard that kind of sketchy was nearby, and some people have questions. They use 3 names when they describe him, so I thought maybe that was a little tongue-in-cheek reference to that. Now, a lot of the documentary, it's dry. They use a lot of archive footage, so in some sense it's nice. It gives you this raw, unfiltered look at history, but in another sense it's all black and white. It's not very good quality. There's not a lot of music, voiceovers, so it can be a bit dry at times, but the way they ended it, they really focus on the assassination, and then after there's all this pain and heartbreak, they flash forward, and 2 of the people that were there during the assassination, they bring them together, and they're old at this point, and there's just such warmth and such a nice interaction between them, and they look at this mural, and the mural is just, it's beautiful, and you see the effect it has on them, and it's just such a wonderful ending. And then they talk about the different people that Robert Kennedy inspired them, and it was great. And some of the quotes they said, they hit you. There's this great quote about every time someone stands up against oppression, forms a little ripple, and eventually enough of these ripples form, and it can create a current that can break down even the greatest walls. And just on its own, that quote doesn't do much, but when you pair it and you think of someone like Robert Kennedy or JFK saying it, for some reason it really does hit you. And I think this documentary, that towards the end, it's almost enough to make anyone kind of want to be an idealist and want to get involved in politics. Or if you are an idealist, it's probably gonna hit you hard. So definitely, it's tough to get through at times. It's not the easiest documentary to watch, but there are some fantastic moments for sure. And with the documentary, you look at these three Kennedy brothers, and Ted Kennedy, there's a movie out about the tragedy that happened to him. Now, very different than the others, but it's still a tragedy nonetheless. And then JFK and Robert F. Kennedy and all these tragedies, and you wonder, with the father, and there's that famous book, Sins of the Father, it's very interesting, and it makes you think. It's such an example of, you look at these brothers, just such privilege, and just born into such privilege, and could have had such easy lives, and could have lived these nice lives of luxury and all these pleasures, and yet, because of maybe certain things they did and certain things they challenged, and they really met very brutal ends. And for other people who are also born to privilege, watching that probably maybe would have an effect, and you would see that and say, really, is my ideals, are they worth it? I'm going to spend my whole life living this really nice life with my family. And fascinating, they don't get into it much, but 11 children. Robert F. Kennedy had 10 children, and then another one after he passed away. So 11 children, that's really something. And you think, I could live with, that's a lot of years with a lot of children, a lot of good times I could have, and is it worth it? And I'm sure for some people maybe watching, they might have thought, no, I'm just gonna sit back, and it's a shame. And that's where you start to get the death of idealism, maybe the death of people putting themselves out there and really trying to change things out of fear, and had a big impact. And it's tough watching this documentary thing. Maybe had things gone differently, a few less assassinations here or there, and we could maybe be living in a different world. I wanted to end with this quote because I really liked it. I'm gonna read it. I don't want to screw it up. This was after Martin Luther King got shot. This is something Robert Kennedy said to a crowd. And it's from his favorite poet, a Greek poet. He said, "Even in our sleep, pain which cannot forget falls drop by drop upon the heart, until in our own despair, against our will, comes wisdom through the awful grace of God." And it's just amazing. Sometimes we forget, you read a quote like that from a completely different time, completely different people, different society, and someone was able to write that because they were that similar to us deep down, and they were able to write something that now us in this time, we can read that and be so affected by it. So it's great reading old quotes like that. It reminds you just how much continuity there is. No matter how much things change, we're deep down really similar people.